Hey guys, it's Clovis, and today I'm going to answer your questions about the Doors of the Roses Redux mod. But quickly, before I go into that, I will say that I'm going to make a playlist of Doors of the Roses Redux mod videos. I still haven't actually got around to doing these videos, which are funny because they were the first videos I was supposed to do. But anyways, I'm going to keep the answers a bit short for this video and then go into more detail about some of them in the future where relevant. Of course, I could spend 5 minutes explaining the intro, but we're just here to answer the questions and quickly address them, so make sure you subscribe to the playlist that I'm going to create, and then in the future I'm going to pump videos out that'll really put more detail into a lot of this stuff. Okay, so Sherlock Holmes asked, is it possible to change the AI to being able to attack while your leader is on crush? That is, of course, if the monster is above 1500 attack. So I am actually not 100% sure. It would require part of the AI breakdown. Basically, the way I think this works is that the AI just doesn't want to complete a move where it thinks it's possible for the monster to end up on a crush tile, which is why it never attacks anything on crush, including your deck leader. So a solution that I had, even though it's not the best thing ever, but it's just kind of what I had to do, was kind of remove a lot of crush from the maps and just use it very, very sparingly. And also the enemy don't think you can attack on crush without dying, so they will sit on crush and not be threatened by anything with 1500 attack or higher. But yeah, the way I think this would work is that you would have to disable a check where the AI would just attack on crush regardless of what happened, and I think that would probably create more problems. For example, if you put crush on the field, then it would just move cards onto crush, and that's probably arguably worse. You'll find a trend with a lot of this stuff is that usually the solution to a problem creates another problem. That's how I'm pretty sure it works. I just never really bothered even going into too much detail about that because it's probably not an easy fix, even if we really wanted to do that. Alex H asked, is there some sort of patch changeling for the mod? I assume you mean changelog. Changeling is a very good DJ Shadow song, though. You should check it out. I'm actually going to link that in the description because I really like that song. I can't seem to find any info on the mod online. So again, subscribe to the playlist. I am going to try and make videos about this, and I will do videos, for example, on the starter deck contents, the enemy deck contents, and perhaps in the future also reincarnation pool, slots pool, and all that. There is a fusion changelog, which I'm going to put in the description. I purposely kept this information private so that people weren't completely spoiled and they had a chance to figure out some of them for themselves. But I think the game's been long enough. It's been out for, I think, over 5 weeks now. So I will include a fusion changelog in the description for anyone who wants to check that out. So Kino Pino asked, Clovis, how do you feel about the possibility of a random setting for Redux, etc.? So there's actually a randomizer mod for the base game. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but if it's just like a cheat or something applied to the game, then I assume you could load that on a patched ISO, a Redux patched ISO, rather than the base game. I'm not 100% sure if that will work, but I'm going to link that randomizer in the description as well if anyone wants to play a randomized Duelist of the Roses, and then I guess you can get back to me and let me know how that goes. Alex G106 asked, is there a way of making deck leader abilities more numerous, as in adding more of them to certain deck leaders who we might think don't have enough? Blue Eyes comes to mind. So, well, yeah, I actually added deck leader abilities rather to, for example, dinosaurs, also sea serpents, beast warriors. I also added a increased strength for same type friendlies for warriors and thunders. I haven't completed this list yet. I guess I can do that in the future. I personally don't think dragons needed more leader abilities because they have 2 very good ones, so I didn't bother adding deck leader abilities to these sorts of monsters that I thought were already good, like machines and dragons. I kind of gave them to the ones that were weak so that people had more of an incentive to level them up, or for example, if you really like dinosaurs and you wanted to level one up, you could actually get some leader abilities out of it. Whereas, you know, dragons are already very good deck leaders, I don't think they really needed a buff. So, Lucas Santos asked, I've noticed that you use a lot of the Deckmaster K AI. My question is it possible to edit or create an AI, or are you guys locked into using one of the pre-existing ones? Yes, we are locked into using one of the pre-existing ones, so I basically had to use one of the available AI in the game and then give them cards and make a map around that AI, and basically all of the opponents and everything was problem solving, you know, giving the opponent cards that they could use or making a decision to give them a card that they might not use in some situation, for example, for the player to drop it, creating the map so that the AI was able to function around that map, and also sometimes vice versa. Sometimes I wanted to create a certain map or give a duelist certain cards, so I picked the AI the best fit. The reason why I use Deckmaster K so often is it's the most versatile one, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, we couldn't reverse engineer or, like, you know, edit or create an AI. Otherwise, I mean, we definitely would have. If we really had a bigger insight into the AI and how much we could change about it, then I would have slaved over making a better AI, but the truth is we couldn't really do that. So instead, I just tried to damage control the AI and how terrible it is, and that's basically the best that I could do. So Missing No asked, I suppose my only question is, will you provide more updates or maybe work another mod in the future, or do you feel the game with the mod is the best it can possibly be? So for what tools we have now, this is probably one of the best things I think that I could realistically do. I'm not saying I made the best possible game using the tools that we have, but I'd say it's above 90% as good as I could realistically make the game using the tools we have now. And these are very fresh tools that I still have yet to release, which again, hint hint nudge nudge, subscribe to the playlist. But anyways, if I'm being honest, well, it's just not possible unless we get like a major breakthrough on modifying the game further than what we can now. And also, if I'm being honest, my enthusiasm to add in a lot of content, such as the god cards and all this stuff, isn't quite as high. I know I'm very enthusiastic about the mod that I made, understandably, but it's because I've wanted this game to be a better version of itself for basically 17 years. I like Duels of the Roses in a vacuum. I like the cards like Cosmo Queen and Skull Knight. I've never really bothered too much to even think about how I would implement cards like the God cards, even if I could, because I don't really like those cards personally. So yeah, asking if I would do any TCG content, I would say no. It would be way more effort than it's worth, even if we had the ability to do so. I just personally wouldn't be too interested in doing that sort of stuff. So as far as we got now, I'm probably not going to make any other major mods in the future, at least I don't plan to. Alessandro asked, would it be possible for you to release a complete 2-player version with 3 copies of all the cards already unlocked and maxed out deck leaders so players could compete with even decks of their choosing? I don't really know why it has to be this way, but I kind of have an idea of what you're asking. In the description I'm going to link a video where basically, well, actually, I'll just link the download file where you can just download a memory card that has 9 copies of everything with all cards at Secretary of Defense. All monsters, rather, at Secretary of Defense. You can just download that and stick it in your memory card, and then duplicate it and stick it in your second memory card slot, and just use that. Costas Minas asked, any chance of adding new cards or new card effects? Is it possible? Are you guys thinking about it? The answers to that is no, kind of, not really, and no. So adding new cards, I'll go back to that in a second. New effects, it would be a large amount of effort to, for example, give... it's probably worth its own video discussing this entire question, if I'm being totally transparent, because it's a lot more than just simply a yes or no answer. I will provide one example. We couldn't just create an effect. Well, most likely, I assume we can't create any effects that aren't already implemented in the game without an extreme amount of effort. Something we could have possibly done, but it would have just required way too much effort, would be, for example, a flip effect that recovers, like, I don't know, say 2,000 life points, which would be broken. I'm not saying we would do that, but for example, that's different to Yashinoki or Fairy's Gift. But I think theoretically we could have maybe changed the effect of one of these cards, but it's a lot more complex than that. Things are way more complex than that. It will be extremely difficult, and a lot of what this boils down to, not only do I have no enthusiasm to add new cards, new effects, or anything, I like the game the way it is, and I like that people who play it are familiar with what the cards do. If we added content, we would have to alter the disk size of the game, and then there would be no way to properly patch it, which means we would have to actually distribute a full ISO of a game that we don't own, which is illegal, and then we would get DMCA'd, and then there would be no mod. So, yeah, truthfully, we didn't even bother thinking about any of that stuff. Plus, I already said before, even if I could add stuff like the god cards like everyone else wants, I don't even really care about those cards. So it was a lot easier for me to just not even have it as part of the picture. So, Lakion, which sounds like a Pokemon, asked, regarding hidden cards, are they in the same spots as the original? Or did we change their positions? So, unless I picked the same position that they were in originally, coincidentally, I changed all the positions and the actual hidden cards. So every time you go into a new map, you'll have to look around for the new location of the hidden card, and then you'll find a new hidden card. I altered all of that stuff. Regarding Bakura and Joey, I noticed that you changed their decks to be Dark Dragon and Toon Dragon themed decks, respectively, making a total of 3 Dragon decks in the mod. I was wondering why you didn't add maybe a Plant or a Beast deck. So this is a very valid question. Truthfully, with the 21, or well, 26, if you count the 3 deck masters, wait, not 26, 24. If you count these as the only possible slots I could have used, it's a fair criticism to wonder why I didn't just make one deck for all these multiple different types. Truthfully, I thought that these decks really felt the aesthetic. I just fit the aesthetic, rather. I just really felt that with Joey having one of his ace cards being Thousand Dragon, I was able to implement him as a Toon Dragon deck, which also allowed me to give that deck a level of difficulty and challenge. And basically the same thing for Bakura. So Bakura, he has that dark duel, as he calls it. He even says it is in his own dialogue. But we already have Panic, who plays fiends. We already have Necromancer, who plays zombies. So I used him as an opportunity to showcase the dark dragons in the game, which I think contain some of the coolest monsters in the entire game, period. So, even though it seems like there's a redundant amount of dragons, the dragons are stretched across the different types of dragons, which, of course, dragons are also quite popular. Even though I'm, not the biggest fan of cards like Blue Eyes White Dragon, I acknowledge that dragons are quite cool. Especially, I really like the Dark Dragons, obviously. And it just, the way everything worked out was, for me, it made more sense to have this that way. Wondering why I didn't add a Plant or a Beast deck, I can actually also answer that specifically, is that, for example, if I gave Bakura a Plant deck, there would be nothing for me to really do in that duel that wouldn't be, for example, very similar to Taya. It would basically be the enemy would just play a bunch of plant cards, which the effect ones are powerful, but the AI would never play them properly. So I'd have to do something like a Rose Spectre of Dun Turbo deck with Fiends and Plants, and then, I don't know, once they bring out a few, they'll play Reign of Mercy, which is basically the same as Taya, fusing Dark Witches and playing her own effect monsters, and then buffing them with Winged Trumpeter, and, adding Life Point Recovery to this sort of stuff. If I gave Bakura a Plant deck, then it would have just been... You'd have 2 duels that, even though they use different cards, they would actually be extremely similar gameplay-wise, and I really didn't want to do that. Beasts, even more so, I think are a very, very boring type. Obviously, I gave Beast Warriors to Richard because I think they really fit that duel, and I also did, I gave Tristan Earth Warriors, and then I gave Labyrinth Ruler Dark Warriors, and then I gave Richard Beast Warriors so that there wasn't an extra warrior deck in there, because already I'm showcasing basically the two most popular types of warriors in terms of actually the contents of the game. I know I said I would keep these answers a bit short, but really I do have reasons for all of this sort of thing. Believe me, I did think about this stuff a lot, and I do have my reasons why I chose to give certain decks certain archetypes or whatever. I just, yeah, as I said, a beast deck as an opponent would have been quite boring, so I opted to just have other stuff when it came down to crunches. So, Andre Jewel asked, what was the most difficult thing to change? So, the way a lot of the changes worked with the modding tools is basically just replacing code with other code to reference different numbers. So, it was all quite simple after a tool was made. But something we ran into a lot of problems with was the fusions. There is literally like 25,000 possible fusion combinations, and it's really difficult to look through all of these things. Of course, you can sort them, but you're still scrolling through potentially thousands of fusion combinations. And there were lots of different difficulties with the fusions. One of the main ones was if you have say two materials that make one card, and then later on two of the same materials that make a different card, it will do whatever the first or the earliest in the list fusion does. So if you didn't do everything extremely attentively, you could not necessarily break the game or break anything, but a fusion that I entered was Elf plus, what was it? Yeah, Mystical Elf plus Moon Envoy. But I didn't actually remove the original Mystical Elf plus Moon Envoy, which makes Celtic Guardian. So while I added in a Moon Envoy plus Mystical Elf fusion to make Skull Guardian, if you tried to do that, it wouldn't actually make Skull Guardian because there was an earlier fusion in the game telling it to make Celtic Guardian, so that fusion didn't work for the first couple patches. Ultimately, most of the stuff was really intuitive to look into a mod, but there was really, like in terms of the modding tools, there was just really no way to have a really concise way to present 25,000 possible fusion combinations. So out of everything we changed, which is mostly the same process, we definitely ran into the most errors, or just the most difficulty, I guess, doing the fusions. Eli Dougal asked, how would adding effects with different targeting or triggers work? For example, making a card that uses Regeki's effect upon death, or a card that makes an opponent's monster lose 1,000 attack and defense whenever they attack, or when the monster is flipped face up. I did kind of go over this before, but this stuff is really out of the realm of what we can do. And potentially an easier thing to do would be, for example, because all the effects are stored in the game, it would have potentially been possible, a lot of work but possible, random example, to give Blue Eyes White Dragon the same effect as Green Kappa, say, if you wanted to, because you would change, I believe how it would work is, you change the effect of Blue Eyes White Dragon from having a value of 0, so it has no effect, to having a value that matches the effect of Green Kappa. And that's kind of the same for, I believe, all the cards that flip up and make water terrain in the adjacent tiles. Their cards just basically reference that same effect that's stored in the game. So, I think it would be very complex to make more complex effects, like having a monster lose 1,000 attack and defense, because I believe a good analogy for that would be, like, you know, Perfectly, Ultimate Great Moth, Gale Dogra, Candle of Fate, and Great Moth itself. You could potentially change the value of that from 100 attack and defense to 1,000 attack and defense per turn, for example. but that would change the effect, and then every single card that referenced that effect would change to that value. That's how I believe it works. I just never bothered trying it, as I said before, because I didn't really want to change the effects of cards in the game beyond people's familiarity anyway. So that's why I didn't do that. As for giving a card Raigeki's effect upon death, I don't even know if that's possible or not, so yeah. Michael Levine asked, have I modified the fusion tables at all? Yes, again, look in the description for the fusion changelog, you will see that we fixed most of the erroneous fusions, for example, fusing like Tomosaurus with Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth and all that stuff. And some other examples, we couldn't fix everything, but we did what we could, and we also we replaced some of those bad error fusions with some more flavorful fusions, such as the ritual fusions, so yeah, go check that out. So, now we get to my favorite question. Ahmad Kayed asked, all I want is a tutorial on how to download it, please. I don't really know what to say about this. If you watch the Redux mod trailer, the first bit of text literally tells you to go through the description. It also tells you how to expand the description if you don't know how to do that, because I've had someone say before that, or, you know, people have basically inferred to me that they didn't expand the description. I don't even know why I'm answering this, because this person's probably not going to watch the video anyway, but you literally just expand the description and it explains it there. It says to download this, it gives you the download link, you click on that, then you go to download the most recent version, the most recent zip file, and then you download that, you open the README, and the README literally explains everything. There is nothing I could do in a tutorial or tell anyone how to install this that the README doesn't tell you. I actually recorded earlier today, I'm not sure how this will end up when I finish it. I literally recorded myself just going through the README and following those instructions, and the game installed perfectly, and I don't really understand why people need a video on it, because I would literally just be basically doing a video that is a README, so please just read the goddamn README. We didn't write it for no reason. It's very obvious I'm not impressed with this sort of question, but one of the other guys who worked on the mod and we literally sat there, wrote a README, went through the instructions ourselves to make sure that they were easy to read. I think over 90% of people had absolutely no problem following the instructions, so please just read the goddamn README is all I can say. Constant Days asked, was there ever a point where you considered creating unique deck leader abilities as part of the mod? So unfortunately, no. I didn't even consider a possibility. Even if I could, I actually am not 100% sure how many I would implement, because the game seems to cover up a lot of the stuff. For example, the suggestion in this question, SP recovery. When destroying a monster with the same type friendly. This sounds extremely complex, and ultimately SP cost reduction is a much simpler and more intuitive solution to something like this. These ideas would be extremely creative, but also an extreme amount of effort. I don't even know if it would be possible to do this stuff. It would require not only a lot of problem solving, but just it's way beyond the realm of what we're happy to do in our spare time as part of a hobby. Gabe Does Life asked, is it now possible to acquire previously unobtainable cards? Short answer is yes. This actually is addressed in the trailer itself. One of the main points of the mod, or the selling point, I guess, of the mod is that you can obtain all the cards now. You can literally obtain every single card in the game except Summon Lord Exodia, which technically is not really a card. Gabriel Venci asked, Time Wizard and Thousand Dragon are only obtainable by reincarnation? The answer is yes. If you duel an opponent and they only have a few cards in the graveyard slots and one doesn't show up in the graveyard slots, then you'll have to get it by either reincarnation or a 3 in a row. Also, quick note that all the hidden cards show up in the slots, so you would never have to worry about finding a hidden card of a card that the enemy drops or the enemy plays, rather, because all the hidden cards are cards that the enemies don't have. So for example, Time Wizard you get via reincarnation, Thousand Dragon you get via 3 in a row, and all the cards that the enemy don't drop to the player. Other examples are like Tremendous Fire and stuff like that. You'll have to reincarnate them or find them by some other method. Again, I will go into more detail about this in a future video, most likely. And now for the last question, which is actually, well, it's just on the bottom of the screen, but it's actually a pretty fitting one. Josh R. asked, I have the correct physical copy of the game, but my laptop does not have a disk drive. Would it work for me to get an external disk drive and image burn an ISO of the disk onto it? So I assume this works. Funny enough, I've actually looked myself at like, e-commerce sites to buy like a cheap $20 USB DVD drive. But ultimately, yes, you can acquire an ISO of this online if you web search for it. I obviously cannot provide that though, because that's software that I don't own. And I definitely cannot host it and distribute it. So if you don't have a disk drive to burn the physical copy of the game, then you have those options. Funny enough, I actually obviously have the physical copy of the game, but I don't have a disk drive in my current computer, so I had to use my old laptop just to burn an ISO of that disc so I could actually play it. So yeah. Alright, well, I did try to keep things as concise as possible. Obviously it was still going to be a long video, it always was going to be. So I want to thank everyone for watching. If I didn't address any questions people are going to ask, once again, I will say to subscribe to the playlist. I'm going to put it at the end screen here. So click on that, bookmark it, subscribe to the playlist or whatever. And also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, you can always do that. And then when I upload new videos, it will notify you when I've done that. And all the videos I'm going to be doing on the Redux mod in the future, when I get around to them, will be added to this playlist. So, thanks again everyone for watching. I know it was just background footage of me answering questions, but I did want you guys to ask me questions so I could answer them. So before I spend another minute or so wrapping up the end of this video, I'll just say thanks for watching again, and I will see you guys in the next video, whatever that's going to be. So yeah, have a good day, night, blah blah blah, morning, whatever it is. See ya.